All right. Hello, everyone. We are live. Welcome back. We are here for session two of Design for Her, and today we are talking about the invisible load. So, if you did not tune in last week, I'm going to give just a quick little refresher of what we are here for, what we are doing, and then we're going to dive into conversation. So, Design for Her is a collaboration between three organizations. I'm joining from the International Association of Women. I have Jessica Lyonford joining me from Project More Happy. And a massive shout out to our host, Talent Ally, who is helping bring all of this together from a production standpoint. This concept of Design for Her is something that Jessica and I dreamed up around conversations that we were already having, but wanting to invite more people into the conversation. I'm a firm believer the more we talk about things, the more we're going to see develop and come out of things, that the more people we bring together to help support and reiterate the messages, the better it's going to be. And I'm strongly committed to helping improve things for women in corporate environments. Love showcasing and seeing companies doing the work, but I know there's companies that want to be doing the work that aren't always sure what is the work? What should we be doing? So Jessica and I put this together. If you are live on LinkedIn with us, that chat box is open. Pop your questions, your comments, anything you want to add. You can also connect with me or Jessica on LinkedIn directly. We can schedule time for one-on-ones. We love having conversations. So with that, Jessica, let's start our conversation today. Invisible load is something that was brought to my attention quite a few years ago, more in the concept of invisible load in the home. I have three kids. There's a lot. But today we're focusing more on invisible load in the workplace. I think they overlap a bit, but can you start us off with definition? Like when I say invisible load, what are we talking about?
Yeah, from a great question. And this conversation is actually what I love about this segment in particular, is it is an example of how we're gonna take that invisible load and make it visible, right? Because when we think about invisible load in the workplace, we know what our job title is and role is usually. And the invisible load is all the extra stuff we're also carrying and doing on top of those job responsibilities. So we're talking about cognitive labor, like for women especially, anticipating projects coming up, things coming up, tracking things before they actually become tasks, right? Like we're really good, our brain is, at noticing that and tracking that stuff so that when it gets here, we're ready. We're talking about emotional labor, right? Managing all the feelings on the team and in the organization and in the rooms that we're in so that other people don't have to, or so that they don't get in the way of the work, the task at hand, right? We're talking about all that administrative work that doesn't actually have a home in the structure, in the systems of the workspace. And so those are the coordination tasks, and they tend to fall on whoever is most willing to say yes. All right. And we can get to why that tends to be women here in a bit. But we're talking about all that administrative labor. And we're talking about cultural maintenance, right? Morale, celebrations, birthday parties, check-ins, all of those things that, again, aren't on anyone's job responsibility list, but they all happen inside workplaces. So that's part of that invisible load. And then just the everyday background processing that our brains do when we're switching between tasks, when we're switching between, they call it code switching, when we're switching between identities, micro identities, how we're supposed to show up in different rooms. All of that is part of this invisible load that our brain is holding 24/7, whether or not it's part of our actual job responsibility. And I'm
Mhm.
exhausted just listing all of that.
Same. As I
Yeah.
was prepping for this conversation, I was thinking about like the moment it hit me, and I don't have just one moment. I have hundreds of moments across multiple different environments. But I also see this come up with our members at IAW constantly, where we have this conversation around it's a level of exhaustion, but you can't fully explain it.
Mhm.
Because they'll say, it's not like I have too much on my plate compared to those around me. But then they list a dozen things that are not on anyone's task list. They're just so used to doing them.
Right.
And none of it's in the job description. It's
Right.
all real work, but there's no way to see it or measure it or distribute it differently. And it just lands and it keeps landing. It's that once you raise your hand, yes, and say, I'll do it,
Mhm.
you tend to like, you become the easy one. You become
Yeah.
the, oh, Megan will do it, Jessica will do it, Megan will do it,
Yeah.
Jessica will do it. Right. And it becomes the default.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so in this invisible load, why do you think it's so hard to see it inside the organization when it's happening?
Yeah, and I think part of this goes to what you just said, is because it's hard for women to see it when they're carrying it. Like so much of it is the default. And so until it feels like the world is burning around you in your job, until you are at that point of burnout or really, really close, no one suspects anything's going on because we're just carrying it without ever questioning that we're carrying it because
Mhm.
we're part of an organization and we feel like everyone has a role to play and what I do affects how everyone else can show up. So it becomes this default that's the undercurrent of everything. I do want to go back and add a little to what you were just saying in that it is just the way it is. It is the default, but it doesn't have to be. There are a lot of systems and processes and policies that can be put into place, not just to protect women from this overload, but to
Mhm.
protect everyone from this overload because it isn't actually a gender issue. It is a systems issue that has been designed to favor one brain type or one personality type. And so we can't actually design structures to lighten this decision fatigue, to lighten the overload that certain people in every organization are carrying. You might be sitting here thinking, "Oh, there's no one on my team that's doing that." There are people on your team that are carrying all of this and they're
Mhm.
doing it without complaining and they're going to do it until they can't anymore. And so we proactive design is how we actually help and get ahead of this.
Yeah. So I want to get into some specifics for people who are listening and going, this doesn't apply here. I want to get into some of the mechanics and how it like where this load might come from
Yeah.
and how it actually accumulates. And I'll share a personal story. Years ago, I worked in an office space that was very male dominated, and my seat was kind of at the front of the building where everyone walked in. And there was a man who every day he walked in and he would stop and just stare over my cubicle, just stare. Every so often, there would be some comments that were borderline inappropriate, but never totally inappropriate. But there was a level of discomfort that just carried in the back of my head. Like it was
Mhm.
that mental piece of like, should I say something? Should I not say something? He's way more senior than me. Who do I go to? Who cares about this? Will they care about this? Will I lose my job? Should I just suck it up and say, oh, he's fine, he's harmless? Um, do you have other examples of how this stacks?
I think that that is a great example, and I think of it as open tabs. How many open tabs are we carrying? So my best example is meetings. I despise meeting culture the way that it is currently set up, right? Because when you go into a meeting, you're invited into a meeting, a lot of times you don't know what you're walking into completely. You might know the project that's coming on. So you're going in anticipating 12 different directions this meeting can go. And then you sit down in the meeting, and inevitably, someone needs to take notes. And inevitably, everyone turns to the same person to have the task of taking notes. So we're going to say, now you have to take notes. You aren't allowed to think and contribute. You have to focus on the note taking. So there's that. And then every conversation or tangent or thing that is brought up in that meeting that doesn't have an agenda becomes an open tab. Okay. And if we don't actually go through and close all the tabs before the end of that meeting, people that were sitting in that meeting, whether or not they should have been, whole different question, and we can talk policies around meetings themselves, whether or not they had a decision to make in that meeting, now they have a bunch of open tabs that they're going to carry throughout the rest of their day until they're closed. And so I just remember I would go to meetings and I would be so overwhelmed by the end of the meetings because I would always leave going, well, now I have 200 things on my plate instead of what I thought was two things on my plate. And they aren't even necessarily my things to hold or carry, but because nothing got resolved, as is the case with a lot of meetings, then anyone at that table who opened those tabs in the group is now carrying those tabs forward.
Uh-huh. Oh, we could have a whole nother session around meeting culture.
Yes,
We
yes,
actually, we have a member who wrote a book about meeting culture and does a lot of
yes.
work around meetings and how much time, and time is money in the workplace, we
Yeah,
lose with unproductive meetings. Think about how many people were in your last meeting, what were their average salaries?
yeah,
Did they walk away benefiting, or did they walk away going, oh, now I have 100 more things on my plate?
right.
Important.
Important. And that is again, that is a design infrastructure decision that we can design meetings so that there isn't this invisible load coming out of every meeting for men and women, for everyone at the table. If you don't need to be in that meeting, you shouldn't be in that meeting. If you don't have a decision to be made, does it need to be a meeting? Like there are policy and infrastructure things we can do to lighten the invisible load in these ways so that our people are not burning out.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
love, I feel like technology has played more of a role in meetings lately with AI and kind of automation built in, but it also, I think, makes meeting easier. And in some cases, that means more meetings. It's so
Yeah.
easy, someone taking notes for us. I was talking to somebody recently and he was sharing, he uses a tool, I can't remember the name of the tool, but it actually allows you to rank your meeting at the end of every meeting, like you give an
Ooh,
assessment.
yeah.
And also if someone's talking too long, you can press a button and it puts a squirrel on the screen, like wrap it up. Um,
Yeah.
and so meetings are just one example of all of this, but I think worth thinking about, what is this all costing your organization? Not just the individual person, but the organization.
Yeah.
Um, Jessica, can you address like what is the business actually losing when this when it all goes unaddressed?
Yeah. And this is the heart of my work because what happens when our energy is depleted, when our energy is low, it impacts how we engage with one another, with clients, with the projects on our plate. And that impacts the company's overall impact that they can make. And that's bottom line. That is client retention. That is all of those pieces. Because what happens when our energy is spent on all these open tabs, when our energy is spent on these default tasks that fall to us, is we don't have the energy to spend on the jobs we were hired to do and on the expertise we were asked to bring. And so your innovation dips, your collaboration dips, like all of these things that lead to more revenue, more innovation, more product or service development. All of that takes a hit, which we know means the bottom line is not, you're not making as much money as you can. And it's not, and this is the part that gets me, and this is why we're having these conversations. It is not a talent issue. It is not someone is not contributing in the way that we hired them to. It is a systems issue in that so many other things are bogging them down, are sucking their energy, they're having all these other open tabs that they're not able to focus all that energy with the gifts that you hired them to bring.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's, I think when you step back and really look at it, your eyes become open to where that energy is going and why you might not be getting the best out of some of your team, right? You hired me to do something really strategic and creative, but if I'm bogged down in meetings or little administrative things all day, or if I'm the errand runner or default note taker, those things accumulate. And I love what you said before about the too many tabs open, right? It's the every open tab is less brain power or energy I can give to the things that you hired me to do.
Right?
Um, But I think so often we fall there. I think there's some cultural patterns that come into play, but also we just fall into default where it happens, it's easy, and we just then automatically follow the same thing we've always done. Um, I want to talk a little bit about the design patterns behind all of this because what I see this show up across members from in IAW. It doesn't matter the industry, the location. Um, the organizations have never actually audited who's doing what, right? Not the official what, but the real what.
Right.
And so can you can you talk a little bit about kind of those design patterns and like what should organizations be looking for?
Yeah.
With
And I love the call out for the need to audit what people are actually doing. Because what tends to happen and why this conversation is so important is we're hired for one task and we go in, or one job, one role, one outcome, right? And we go in fired up, ready to do this and contribute. And we have all of these other things that come with any role in any job that are going to take our energy and attention away from that one. And
Mhm,
so until a company goes, what are all the things this role is actually holding? Then you can't design containers and systems and processes to allow all of that to get done without depleting people. So,
mhm,
um, this shows up in so many different micro moments throughout each workday, but we have to understand all the different things that keep a business running, a workplace running, not even a business, a workplace, because those are two different things.
mhm,
Um, so that we can get really intentional around, let's say, decision architecture. Who actually owns each of these little projects and can make the decision so that we don't all have open tabs, so that one person knows that they can close a tab,
mhm,
right? We talked about meetings already. Role clarity. Like instead of the default being saying yes, understanding and having the systems in place to where someone says, no, that's actually this person's or this role's responsibility and can shift it away. Because right now, all the cultural norms are if a man were to delegate a task out, that is seen as a competent managerial like decision that they made. And when women delegate out, it's seen as they're getting it off their plate and they can't handle it. And so
mhm.
we have to have systems and policies that level that contextual playing field so that everyone feels like they can delegate what needs to be delegated without the label of not being able to handle it. And so there's a lot of nuance in that role clarity piece as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, when I think back earlier in my career, I would probably never have pushed back on someone saying, can you add this? Get like add on, add on, add on. Because I was a people pleaser. I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know how to say that's not really in the scope of what I do. Or as I have gotten older, I definitely have more comfort around what is mine and what isn't mine and the delegation piece of it. Um, but it's interesting, and that's one of the reasons I love mentoring and reaching younger women in the workplace so that we build these skills sooner because as much as I love to see organizations doing great work, it's not always going to come from the organization. I think as employees, as women in the workplace, we can also put in the effort to improve across the board. Um, I'm curious, are there any patterns that you see kind of repetitively that you think organizations could actually change relatively quickly, right? If someone's listening to this and they're like, "Oh, I want to put something in place," what's something that they could do relatively quickly?
Yeah, I think I just spoke to this, but this is the one that comes up the most in with my clients in the work we do. And it is not having a laid out decision architecture. And this is not an org chart. A lot of people default to the org chart being the decision architecture. And the problem with that is that your people at the top of the org chart are too busy, have too many other things on their plate in terms of growing the business, having those relationships with people they need to on this whole
Mhm.
different playing field. They cannot be the deciders for a lot of the minutia. So you have to build a separate decision architecture. And I tell my clients that it's really great when you're onboarding new
Mhm.
people into your organization for them to have that decision architecture, but also for them to have relational architecture for their job. Who do
Mhm.
I need to go to for these
Mhm.
different aspects of what I'm carrying? Because when we have that system built out for women, for men, for everyone, it allows us to focus our energy better on what we want to do and what we were hired to do.
Mhm.
But that
Mhm.
you have to go back and audit. You have to know what everyone is carrying, which
Mhm.
isn't, that sounds exhausting. It isn't. Instead of your next engagement survey, instead of the next like all agency, all hands on deck workshop or meeting, have people just make a list of everything they're carrying in the office with their role on it. Start there because you will real quick be able to see who's carrying the most and what are the tasks that are most spread out that could be centralized. It does not have to be a big thing, but you have to get people to identify what they're carrying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that first, I love the idea of doing it like in place of a culture survey or in place of something you're already sending out, but helping your employees understand what we're talking about. It's not just about tell me everything you're working on. It's really looking at what are you carrying behind the scenes that's
Make a
not
list of
documented
everything they're.
in a job post right now.
Yeah,
I think that so often we get very good at explaining our tasks, but we don't always. So I think there's a piece of education there
yeah,
as well, where bring in somebody to talk about mental load and how to actually look at like what is the complete task. This became clear to me. This is a personal home example, but somebody said from a parenting perspective, I think it was Eve Rodsky that gave this example. Let's say dad's taking kid to the birthday party.
mhm.
Dad handling that task from start to finish means dad gets the invite, does the RSVP, buys the gift, wraps the gift, brings the kid, picks up the kid. Like it's end to end. It's not just the gift is ready. Like, and
Right.
that changed my view of mental load and like the invisible load, all of the things we put in place to stack
Yep.
to
Yeah.
get the kid to the birthday party. And it's so I think having that understanding of what are the examples and how does this play out to really understand what other things are your employees doing that shows up as invisible load that can be addressed through some kind of design mechanism.
Right.
Something
I mean,
gonna help.
I come from the world of advertising and in the creative space, I was in the creative department. The project kicks off with a brief, right?
Mhm.
And I remember people would be so upset that we'd go to the briefing and not all the information would be in the brief. Because from our perspective, that's what kicks off the project. We did not even, well, I say we didn't. Collective we did not even take into account how much work and the process that and the inputs and the collaboration that goes into even that brief. And so I think a lot of times in the workplace, we know where our role begins and ends, but we
Mhm.
don't understand, as you're talking about, we don't understand the scope of how the whole cycle plays out.
Mhm.
And to be able to lighten some of this invisible load, you have to understand how the whole cycle plays out so that you can understand handoff, so that you can understand the anticipatory stuff, so that you can understand you need to take a gift to the party and that you're in charge of it instead of someone just knowing that's going to default to them nonstop.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. we could continue going on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
I want to take a moment to share information about this resource. So we also co-designed a resource that it's downloadable. I'm going to pop the link in the chat in just a moment, but it's 5 design shifts to help you go from good intentions to real retention when you look at acquiring talent, specifically female talent. But I will pop that link in the comments on this live stream and go submit your information, download it. But also reach out to either me or Jessica if you're interested in more conversation, whether it's from I'm struggling personally and I could use some support, or I have questions to I work for an organization and I would love to bring somebody in to help us design better. We are both always open for conversations. No
Yes.
pressure
No
conversations, just
pressure.
how do we put more of this into the world? Um, Love talking about it. Um, Jessica, as we start to wrap up here, um, what would you add for the resource that we created? Anything you would add there on the importance of what's in it and how to best utilize it?
Yeah, so what I love about this resource, and it's what I love about this conversation and the collaboration here between you and me and our two businesses, because we serve the same space, but from two very different angles. And so this resource really helps you think about it from both perspectives. The first is from the systems level. Like, how can we be getting data about how our current infrastructure is setting up our people for success? Is it? Is it not? And what can we start thinking about in terms of tweaking that design so that more people can show up, right? And then you have the how do we support the individual women on that level so that they can show up and feel supported and contribute in meaningful ways to the best of their ability. So this whole conversation exists and has to exist on an individual level and a systems level. Because as I like to tell people, you can do as much of the personal work as possible. And you can still walk into a toxic workplace and none of that matters. And so you have to have that systems layer on top of the personal layer, or you're still going to hit burnout. Now, what you can do on the personal layer is you can start leading your organization when you feel supported, when you understand that there are things you can do on the personal, on the individual level. You can start being the leader that starts shaping those systems level conversations. And that's why both pieces are so important here. And that's what the resource does. It breaks it down to both of those buckets.
Absolutely. And I love this resource. It's a quick, easy, scannable. It's not like pages and pages of reading and research. It is a toolkit you can go use.
Yeah.
We will be back next week on Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern, going even deeper on all of this. Our topic next week is from hired to gone. And we're going to be looking at where culture infrastructure breaks down between that offer letter and the exit interview. Um, we'll be on Talent Ally's LinkedIn page streaming live. It will be recorded if you can't be there live. Jessica, thank you as always. Love this conversation. And Talent Ally, thank you for hosting us today. Thanks for everyone who watched live. Again, reach out if we can help support you, and we'll see you back here next week.
Thank you.